You're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm George Cedarquist, joined this week by Oliver Camacho and Weston Williams. All right, here we go. In our new segment, Swings and Misses, we look at the best and worst decisions from Operaland, starting with the home runs and strikeouts of Anthony Freud's tenure at Lyric Opera of Chicago. And then he was in fantasy football enemy territory. But did he enjoy Opera Philadelphia's Festival 023? Oliver tells all in Monday Evening Quarterback. Plus, in the 2-minute drill, how would you look if you were naked on stage and 4.9 billion years old? Yikes. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, Spotify, click follow, Apple Podcasts, hit the plus sign, send us a voice memo, email us your hot takes, mailbag at operaboxscore.com. You can even just record your thoughts using the You Got Something to Say page on our brand new website, by the way, operaboxscore.com. Hey, look, however you contribute, you're going to get the OBS beer coaster, an OBS lapel pin, and the all-new #1 OBS fan foam finger, just for sharing your own hot take.
Could really confuse anyone at the sports event with that one.
It's just so much good merch, Oliver.
Yeah, it is good merch. Actually, I just came from a conference where there was all sorts of branded merch.
Is that a drink? I think that might be a drink.
Branded conference from various radio stations and public media companies. And one of the branded items was a cozy for your earbuds.
Oh my goodness.
So a branded cozy for your earbud case. Now, I think they were a little bit prejudiced because I think it will only fit iPods iPod earbuds, because mine are Beats and mine are very wide. And so I was trying to slip this. It's like a condom you put on top of your
safety first. It's so important when you're listening to opera.
But mine's too thick.
Weston, any merch that you've had in your life recently?
No, I exclusively use big chunky headphones that are that I get weird looks for on the subway. I have my Sennheisers on. I'm going down the red line and I have like a 12-foot long wire wrapped around me, and there's always comical situations where I get stuck in the doors and then I get pulled off the thing, and it's a whole thing. Going down to the Lyric to see a show is hard, which is why I haven't made it to Flying Dutchman yet.
Jeez. Well, we're going to get there in a second. A little bit of sports talk. Megan Rapinoe, who's 38, just played her.
Rapinoe.
Oh my goodness.
Rapinoe.
See, I got. We got to take
that is
again.
not how you pronounce it, George.
We're gonna have that cannot go out. We're gonna have to start that again. We'll talk a little bit of sports. There's so much happening in the fall in sports, but Megan Rapinoe.
Rapinoe.
Oh my goodness. Oh goodness.
I'm leaving it in, George. I'm leaving both of them in.
Megan Rapinoe is 38 years old, the iconic player for the U.S. women's national team. Just played her final game over the weekend, actually here at Soldier Field against South Africa. 203 international appearances, 2 World Cups, winning teams, by the way, 1 Summer Olympics team that won gold. And she says this, quote, "I think, by a mile, what we've done off of the field, I think that's made such a lasting impact. We've been a big part of talking about whether it's gay rights, racial justice, trans rights, and everything about every conversation in sports, in particular women's sports." What I love about this is that she really has put everything outside of soccer first. Would this art form not be incredible if every opera singer was like, you know what? Yeah, I go out there and I sing well, but honestly, it's what I do off this stage is what is going to have a lasting impact in people's lives. That is my challenge to the artists in this art form. Let's talk some opera.
Tops and bottoms, cheers and boos. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. It's time for Swings and Misses.
That's right, folks. It's a brand new segment. Thank you so much, Norm, for your tireless work. He's with me here in this closet, completely silent at all times until he needs to say one of these intros, and he nails it every time. Swings and misses. We have inaugurated this segment to look into the tenure of Anthony Freud, who was the general director of Lyric Opera of Chicago, starting on the very first day of the 2011 season, 2011-2012 season, I should say, and just announcing his retirement like a week ago, I believe.
Right.
He's going back to Britain at the end of the season.
Shortening his contract, which is something that doesn't happen that often.
Yes, that's true. Well, I mean, it doesn't happen that often, except apparently this year because everyone's doing it. All the cool kids
There we go.
are leaving general directorships at opera companies. So I thought we might assess Anthony Freud's tenure the way we might assess an NFL coach. You know, what are his championships, win-loss records, hires, new initiatives? How do we decide if Anthony Freud is the Bear Bryant of opera? That is the question we are setting out to answer here today on Opera Box Score, with some hits and, no coaches without a few misses. So let's start with George. What are some hits in your mind from Freud's tenure?
I want to look at the statistics first of all, and then I'm going to throw it at Oliver for some of the hits and misses, and then I'll go at the end. So purely just starting at the stats. So there's been 4 general directors of Lyric since the company was founded in the 50s.
Right.
And the tenures of those 4, Fox, Kranick, Mason, and Freud, have basically all been the same, anywhere between like 13 to 15 or 16 years. In fact, Anthony Freud has spent more time at Lyric Opera Chicago than he did at Houston, where he came from, or even from Welsh National Opera, where he was before then. I want to add this, though. In 2021, and this is according to Crane's Business Magazine, 2021, Anthony Freud made just over $736,000. He was the 16th highest paid in the not-for-profit sector in Chicago. He was not only the highest administrator of a performing arts company, he was the only administrator of a performing arts company in the top 25 in this city. So read into the numbers, what you will about that, but it shows you that this is like a really important job, right? I mean, Peter Gelb at the Met is the nation's wealthiest, or has the biggest budget of any performing arts organization in the country. Clearly, the city of Chicago thinks that Lyric is equally important.
Yeah, exactly. Lyric has always had the reputation of being the other opera company after the Met, whether or not it necessarily measures up to that standard. And I think it's really interesting for me because I am still a relatively new transplant to Chicago. I came in 2016. I was just entering college when Anthony Freud took over at Lyric Opera of Chicago. So I have known nothing else, unlike my 2 wizened compatriots here with me on the podcast.
Oliver and I really that old? Come on, Oliver, you going to let that stand? Get this guy out of here.
So I would really like to know from the perspective of someone who has seen a little bit of a previous administration, how different really was he? What did he do differently compared to previous administrations?
Well, I don't know exactly how to answer that question, but I'll try to answer it the way I was trying to address this topic in the way I had intended to without your question setting me up to fail.
I mean, you know me, Oliver. And
just swing,
to hell
Oliver.
with the script.
Read our notes here, buddy. Read our notes. So I'll say that, and it's not clear how much of this is music director and how much of this is general director and how much of this is actually Renee Fleming,
right?
Who, is the whatever artist in residence or curator, or creative consultant, or I forget what her title is. But they started taking some swings, such as programming the opera Weinberg's The Passenger, which is a horrifying story about the Holocaust. And then some DEI forward shows that this is before we even started using that term in post-pandemic, such as An American Dream, which is about the Japanese internment. That was staged in 2018. They did Fellow Travelers, the Lavender Scare opera, Charlie Parker's Yardbird. Then there was that commission by Jimmy Lopez Bellido, Bel Canto, based on the Anne Patchett novel. So these are some things that definitely are trying to find new audiences and trying to be inclusive of the many races that are represented in Chicago. So I thought those were great swings. Whether or not the productions themselves, the performances themselves were very good is one question, but I think I'm happy to go see those types of works, which I have to say, of all those that I mentioned, were all written in this new 21st century American opera approach, which is to be lyrical, to be tonal, to not,
I call it Carlisle Floyd 2.0.
Yes. To not be so academic and writing for other composers, actually making the work accessible. Let's remember that Dead Man Walking was programmed at Lyric Opera Chicago in 2019. And yes, that opera's been around for a while, but as everybody knows, it's just making its Met debut, I guess tomorrow as of this recording.
Right.
So those I think were good things. I'll also say, and once again, I'm not sure if this was, artistic director choices or Anthony Freud choices, but we got Benjamin Bernheim back in 2017 when he sang Faust with none other than Eileen Perez. We got Christina Gerke's Electra in 2012. That was a season opener, and that was an amazing performance.
Bop.
Yeah, and we also got Sandra Radvanovsky's Three Queens. We didn't get each of the operas like she performed them at the Met, but we got the highlights. We got the best of Sandra Radvanovsky concert, and she got to, really feel like a star. And, Lyric Opera is sort of her hometown company. So I'm thrilled that she got to, sing three really important parts of those three major operas in her repertoire as one concert. So audiences who can't travel to Europe or to wherever to hear her sing those full operas got a chance to hear, those final scenes. I thought that was a really nice opportunity, and they made a recording of it. Some swings that I'm not sure if they were misses or if they were hits.
Foul balls.
The collaboration with Second City. I think they did two of them, one based on Wagner and one just Welcome to the Opera. And they had great marketing for it. We haven't seen that collaboration in a couple of years, but Chicago is known for its improv and for its comedy. We're a comedy town. And why not try to tap into that comedy audience? I doubt any new fan of opera came from the comedy circuit. They can't afford it. But maybe we did cross-pollinate with the comedy scene, and maybe some lyric opera audiences, started going to whatever, Zanies, I don't know if that's the case. But I mean, I understand the intention there. It was a swing, and I appreciate it. Yeah. Some misses for me, for sure. The starting of music theater taking up a whole slot in our season, and now as our seasons get smaller, that music theater piece really does feel like an intruder to me. I know a lot of people loved. Is it Jesus Christ Superstar? Is that the one, the big rock opera?
It was amazing. Yes, it's incredible.
So I know that a lot of people thought that was a great show. I wanted to have earplugs, and I go to everything. And
baby, because we wanted it hard and loud, and we got hard and loud.
Yeah, look, and I'll say the performances were great. I thought it was, very engaging, and but I just feel like, why is this here? Why can't it be somewhere else? Like that, this is a show that doesn't need opera audiences to attend it. It will do fine on Chicago's Broadway scene, And the thing that I'm really disappointed in that seems to continue to be part of their strategy is programming early Verdi operas. We've already had Louisa Miller. We had last year's season opener, which was Ernani. The one that happened during COVID was Attila. I'm not sure if audiences are hankering for this. And in this sort of tenuous time for opera, who is the audience for this? Is it welcoming new people to the opera? Or is it only, something for the diehards, for the real aficionados. And let's be honest, there's not that many of those either.
I think part of it was, Enrique Mazzola. I feel like it's something he's very passionate about. Mm-hmm. And I do get like, when you hire, a new principal conductor, you really do, or artistic director, you do want them to be doing things they're passionate about. I think that is very important. It's not quite appealing to the opera diehards who are like, oh, we like the middle and late period Verdi. Who really cares about the early Verdi? It's not really appealing to the new people who want to hear new weird stuff. It was, it's a strange move. And I think there's a lot of little moves like that, I think, across his tenure that I'm like, are you sure about that? Like, never anything like egregiously like wrong per se, at least from my perspective, but there were a lot of little things that you just kind of make you go, question mark?
Yeah.
Look, I mean, you're gonna swing at some bad balls, and that's what we're calling misses, right? And our metric swings are when you connect and when you make things happen. We look at Lyric Unlimited, Yardbird, Fellow Travelers. Second City, he swung at a ball and he missed, right? And that hasn't really played out. I would say the musicals actually was very successful. I think that when you're getting musical theater scores played by a full orchestra, whether that's West Side Story, Candide, Jesus Christ Superstar, that is thrilling. That is exciting. And you can't just go anywhere to see that. And the Lyric really filled a niche by doing that.
Yeah, I do think there's something to be said for that. Like, you will not hear, say, West Side Story with a full orchestra anywhere anymore, even if you hear West Side Story. However, I do think that it wasn't so much an artistic decision, because here's the timeline, right? Anthony Freud starts his tenure in October of 2011. Mm-hmm. During that 11-12 season, they put on Showboat, and it breaks the record for individual ticket sales. And I think that the Lyric, under Freud, saw dollar signs, and within a couple of seasons, they were like, we're going to have one of these every single year. And I think that's sort of the objection that people have. Like, if it was more of a once in a while kind of thing. And then I think, last season we technically had two. Now this is a miss, and I will say I'm kind of stealing from Ashley's notes here, because again, I wasn't here yet in Chicago, but there has been a perceived quote unquote general artistic decline.
Yeah.
Which, like, speaking as someone who wasn't there, like, I don't know how legit that is. I don't know what people are actually complaining about. Often when people complain about this sort of thing, it's generally old man yelling at cloud type of complaints. But, I don't know. Is there anything to it, George? What do you think?
Well, look, okay, so with all due respect to Ashley, who's not here to defend herself, it's like, what's the metric for general artistic decline, or GAD, as we like to say in the business? Ashley makes the point that the decline started in the Bill Mason era, Safe Productions, the controversial choice of dropping from 8 operas to 6 as part of the season, adding musicals. I get all that. Ultimately, if you're assessing, say, an NFL coach, it comes down to championships, right? Ditka would not be the godlike coach he is today if the 85 Bears had not won the Super Bowl. Here's the fact, is when you look at the International Opera Awards, which started in 2013, Lyric has some nominations in a variety of categories, starting in 2016. In 2018, nominated for Best Company and Orchestra. 2019, finalist for Best Chorus. The thing that happened is that Anthony Freud and Lyric were a victim of the world around themselves. They have no pandemic wins, right? The Ring Cycle, the final installment of the Ring Cycle, Goethe Dämmerung, is supposed to open in 2020, followed by 3 cycles, and it doesn't happen. And does Lyric necessarily pivot in a smart way? I don't know if you can look at any digital output that had a lot of impact. We can look at, say, proximity, factotum, which Ashley counts as swings and connecting. So those are successes. But ultimately, it feels like this opera company did not pivot. I'm not going to say smartly enough, but they didn't pivot quickly enough and with enough intention and payoff after the pandemic.
Yeah, I think that Anthony Freud's tenure has been very much a traditional sort of A-list opera company sort of tenure. with all the good and bad that entails, right? They're not, a smaller house that can do different things that is used to dealing with large financial disasters. They did start programming a lot of good stuff, after 2020, like bringing Fire Shut Up in My Bones to Chicago, obviously huge win, and things like that. Like they've done a lot of these sort of like, what you would kind of expect any house to do. And again, a lot of the newer operas, a little slightly stranger operas they were doing before, like say the Met was, but they were really only ahead of the Met. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I feel like in general, I think I would characterize his tenure as good, like it doesn't enthuse me in retrospect.
And here's the problem. He was a victim of circumstance, right?
Right.
So like he has a good tenure. Again, he's being paid $750,000. You can discuss if that's on point or not. He's having a good tenure, but in the light of the pandemic, how to plow through that and recover from that is going to be enough. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it is. And then, of course, you look at the lack of actual wins at International Opera Awards since 2019. I don't think there's been a nomination. So
I don't really care about International Opera Awards. That's like a fake thing. So.
It's not a fake thing. It's not a fake thing because it puts this company on a world map. And I think that's what the company had under Mason, was that this was America's second city and America's second opera company on a global stage. And I don't know if that's the case. Right now.
Interesting.
Here's what I do want to know, and I know we gotta wrap it up. Is I'd love to know who's next. Who replaces?
Me too.
How do you make that choice to replace Anthony Freud? Who is it? And what company are they coming from? Are they coming from an American opera company? Are they American? It doesn't bother me one way or the other. That's not meant to be a slight at all. God knows I'm English.
I would love to see a big swing. Let's get that swing. Let's connect it. Get Oliver Camacho in there.
I mean, it would be great to see a woman lead that company. Or
absolutely.
Company, but I think you take your bigger swings with music directors, and they had their chance to do that, and they didn't. That to me feels like a big question mark whether or not Enrique Mazzola is going to be good for Lyric. I'll say that like Anthony Freud, in my experience with him, is a very good spokesperson for opera and a good spokesperson for the company.
Yes,
and he's very dignified. And, he had COVID not he had COVID. Maybe he did have COVID. COVID was part of his tenure. And a lot of, companies had to react to, the new landscape after the social uprising and COVID primers, all those things. And I think they did okay. I think some of the programming we've seen since the pandemic is a little bit like a reaction, but that's good. At least he's showing that he cares and he's trying to figure out what to do. Right now, it doesn't feel like the company has a lot of focus. And I think what's making it even harder for Chicago audiences to understand what his tenure meant is that one of the main journalists here in Chicago really has had a bone to pick with Anthony Freud and only says mean things. Even when giving praise to a performance at Lyric, always finds a way to put in a dig at Anthony Freud. So I think a lot of people are influenced by that when they read, because it's like, that outlet is one of the only places where you regularly see reviews of things in Chicago. So
yeah. Let us know what you're thinking, especially if you have thoughts on who could be the next general director at Lyric Opera Chicago. We want to hear from you. Mailbag at operaboxscore.com. Sports talk before we get into Monday evening quarterback. Fantasy football happening. Fast and Furious Opera Box Score currently at 1-1. The last NFL games being played this evening as we tape the show. It looks like Tobias and I are going to lose this one, go 1-2. A lot of football left to play. Hopes are still high.
Tobias dragging us down from the grave.
Yet again.
We are, really outside of the main Grand Slam season of tennis, and there'll be a couple more Masters events before the end of the calendar year. But the current result that we're talking about right now in the tennis world is the Laver Cup, which is a new-ish event that was added to the official ATP Tour that was founded by Roger Federer, and it's in its 6th season, and it pits European players against not European players. They
nice.
call the not European players
the colonialism cup.
yes, they call them Team World, which is like sort of like, you know, when you think about wine, like there's old world and there's new world wines, you know.
The New World Order.
Yeah.
That's like wrestling.
I have to say, you know, this year, the Team World definitively and comprehensively beat the old world. 13-2 was the final score. And that's like a round robin, like sort of like, you know, some doubles, some singles. So Team Europe sort of is struggling right now. So
Roll Tide.
sorry, Europe.
Pass or fail? Here's Monday evening quarterback.
It's Monday night, and I just got back yesterday from Philadelphia, where I attended the first weekend of Opera Philadelphia. And if you're listening to this on the day that it drops, you still have a chance to catch all of the shows at week 2 of the festival. I was going to go through it in chronological order of how I saw the performances. My first night I arrived, I got to see the world premiere, Renee Orth's 10 Days in a Madhouse.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's gotten great reviews. And for me, the performances were outstanding, especially Rand Bryce Davis, who has really the only thing that feels like an aria in the show.
Okay.
And surprise performance by an artist who gets a lot of work at Tapestry Opera. Her name is Lauren Pearl. And Lauren Pearl, I don't want to spoil the surprise for those of you who are still going to see it next week. But Lauren Pearl has mostly an acting role for most of the opera. And then there's a surprise. And it's shocking. And when that type of surprise happens, and those of you who see it, you're like, it feels like magic when an artist can do two things and do two things well. I know it's just two things. It's like people do all sorts of things. But,
it's plenty. It's good directing.
Keira Duffy, her voice is so beautiful, and it's such a dramatic part, and she manages to still have beautiful tone. Her big scene is the very end of the opera, and leading up to it, she has to do lots of extended technique stuff and, you know, off the voice kind of Sprechstimme type of things. And, she manages to keep her beautiful voice beautiful. And, the show is interesting. I think Weston would really like it a lot. It's maybe not.
What's that supposed to mean, Oliver?
Yeah. It's not the type of thing that I want to hear again.
Yeah, it was written after 1830, so Oliver's not interested.
I definitely was glad that I saw it, because it was like a 90-minute roller coaster ride. It was very engaging and very upsetting. That's what it's for. You know, like, I think that this is the type of show that's meant to shock you and to make you think about something. And it did. It certainly did. So on that account, it was very successful. So I started my day 2 by attending the voice recital at Curtis Institute featuring Amanda Majeski, our interview guest from last week, and pianist Milos Rapitsky. Fantastic program. Very, female composer forward. And Amanda is just such an outstanding performer and actress, and she knew how to pace it, and she gave a little speech at the end of the recital before she sang her final song, saying, you know, I attended Curtis all these years ago. It brings back so many memories, and I never had a chance to give my final recital. I guess she started getting work before she even finished. And so this is like coming full circle, and now I'm giving this recital. And she talked about how nervous she was to like do all these songs and to do, you know, it's not something that she does all the time now that she's a big opera singer. So it was really sweet, and it made her last song even more effective, which was Strauss's Zueignung. She sounded like gold. I was very happy to attend that. Then I saw Simone Boccanegra. Here we are talking about Early Verdi again. Let me just say that Quinn Kelsey sounds like $1 million. And he sang Falstaff at Santa Fe last year, and I think I said he sounds like $1 million. Like, he has found something in his singing that makes singing Verdi seems like such a natural fit for him.
Right, yeah.
And we haven't really had the conversation because we don't have enough baritones lovers on this program to talk about what it means to be a Verdi baritone, but it's a thing. And there are so few of them out there, and so many of them end up blowing out their voices and sounding woofy and hoarse. And Quinn is somehow sounding more beautiful. the more he gets into this repertoire, the more it fits him like a glove. This is a role that he was born to sing. Christian Van Horn, very noble as Fiesco. Anna Maria Martinez singing gorgeously again, just as she did as Elvira in Don Giovanni. She's outstanding. There's a tenor in the show named Richard Trey Smagur, and he's got it. He's like 7 feet tall, and he's definitely has an instrument there. I'll leave that there. I think the kind of the surprise of the evening was the performance of Benjamin Taylor, who in the role of Paolo, the villain. And all the other artists on the stage, except for Richard Trace Magor, are like known quantities. And it's a pretty big role, this Paolo role. To take a chance on a newcomer and a youngish artist was a risk, and he really delivered. So congratulations for casting Ben Taylor. Now, Simon Boccanegra, I've heard the opera before. I've listened to the recordings. There are some gorgeous moments, especially the duets. But do I know what I saw? No. And at the intermission, I went to the reception. I talked to a bunch of people, and nobody knew. It was the topic of the intermission. What are we watching? Okay. Nobody knows how to, like, the plot is so convoluted. And I will say that the stage direction did not help in telling the story. The beautiful set design, it was a very grand set. It looked very expensive, with lots of moving parts. There were these 2 nude male statues holding torches that I want for light fixtures in my house.
Okay.
I'll just refer back to my comment about early Verdi in the previous segment of the show.
Yes.
This is the anti-early Verdi podcast for OperaBoxscore.
And the thing is that Opera Philadelphia is trying to, market Simon Boccanegra as like the traditional core repertoire piece that will make you fall in love with opera. I mean, they even did a whole bit where they were standing outside of the Academy and, doing like a Billy on the Streets type of quizzing passersby.
Nice.
And offering them tickets to Simon Boccanegra,
Yeah.
And I hope that those people use those tickets and stayed for the second act, I closed out my weekend by seeing Unholy Wars with friend of the show, Kareem Suleiman. It's his own concept for talking about Middle East conflict with Italian Seicento music of like Caccini and Monteverdi. A beautiful idea. The band was gorgeous. Other friend of the show, singing in that, John Taylor Ward, the bass baritone. Let me say that again. The other artists in the cast were friend of the show, bass baritone John Taylor Ward, soprano Raha Mirzadegan, and dancer Coral Dolphin. There was some music that was used to stitch together the Baroque pieces composed by Mary Kuyum Dijan. I probably said her name wrong. I'm sorry. And it was directed by Kevin Newberry. And it had projections and lots of movement. And it was mesmerizing. Everybody sounded gorgeous. The performances were gorgeous. I love this music so much. And so I would be happy just to hear these artists perform this music. Maybe I'm not the person that needs to see a story put on top of it. But the audience loved it. I mean, everybody was mesmerized. I talked to people like, I know we don't go for that type of thing, but it was so gorgeous. I couldn't take my eyes off of it, So congratulations to them. I think that's Kareem's goal, is to like make this music mean something to people that don't really care about early music.
So you're spending, the whole block of time you're seeing all these shows, which is great. The vibe, was it muted at all by the recent retirements, the budget cuts, etc.? What was the energy like? The content.
Let me get at that one another way. And I just have to say before I get to that, there was one more event I went to on Saturday night, which was super cool. It was a cabaret by the Bearded Ladies Cabaret, like a drag show. And they did a tribute to Jennifer Higdon and her wife. And it was very queer. And they did it in the style of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And it was super, super cool. And that was one of the funnest things I've done. So I will say that I went to O Festival in 2019 with Tobias Wright, enemy of the show. And I had a great time. And I thought there was so many things to do. And it really felt like, it was a feast. And they had the world premiere of Dennis and Katya. And it was on Semele with Amanda Forsyth. And Love for Three Oranges, and other things. Really, really awesome year. Then they had to skip 2 years thanks to COVID, and they came back last year. And I think I came back a little bit sour on the O Festival because none of the things that they were offering were really my style of show. Maybe Weston would have had a good time there.
Yeah.
But I didn't really feel like there was any piece that was like, oh, this was meant for me, So this year I was a little bit skeptical, but I have to say I really enjoyed myself. The overall feel, the integrity of the performances, I thought it was great. What I think is missing, and I said this to Frank, so he's not going to be surprised when he hears this, is just a way to tie it all together and for there to be some space maybe that between performances people could go and like visit the archives of Opera Philadelphia or like talk to a dramaturg or talk to one of the artists. Just like give us a couple more things. If we're coming to Philadelphia to see these shows, we need a little more community to make it feel like a festival.
Do you need like a chill out room or like a sensory room or something?
Yeah. Even just to look at, they actually make really beautiful print programs. All of their collateral is gorgeous. And I think it'd be nice to have like a little archive of the collateral to just like browse through, pictures of performances, etc. The feeling, the vibe, that's a good question. I think that, we are very much in the inside track. We're too online as opera people. And I don't really think that general audiences.
Not a factor, I guess.
Or care,
Festival Over 23, it's running through October 1st. If you're there, let us know what's happening. Send us that voice memo or email us your hot takes. Super simple, mailbag at operaboxscore.com. You can even just go to the website, the page that says you got something to say, and just record your thoughts there. 2-minute drill right now.
This just in, the 2-minute drill.
All right, listen up. Here's everything you need to know about what happened in Operaland this week.
Samuel Schultz took to Facebook to call out the Met for its production Dead Man Walking, starring Susan Graham. Said Schultz, "This opera explores a nun's push to remove the death penalty for a convicted rapist murderer. In the story, the victims are killed after being raped, and their voices are never given a chance to be heard." Cast as the mother of the rapist murderer is Susan Graham, a well-known opera star who has victim-shamed me as she defends her friend, rapist David Daniels.
Meanwhile, Peter Gelb has received Ukraine's Order of Merit. The award comes after the Met GM's public removal of Putin-supporting artists and helping to create the Ukrainian Freedom Orchestra. We assume firing Anna Netrebko had absolutely nothing to do with the decision-making process whatsoever.
In labor news, the Chicago Symphony Orchestra says it's agreed to a 3-year contract with its musicians union, and the Teatro Real's chorus has come to an agreement with the House to call off a strike. But the Union for the Philadelphia Orchestra released a statement saying they're, quote, under protest as they begin a North Carolina tour. The musicians noted that following a failed negotiation session last week, they would embark on the tour out of respect for their hosts in North Carolina.
OTSL has had a good run on Twitter, but we will no longer be active on Twitter X as of today. That is the last tweet you'll ever read from Opera Theater of St. Louis. The pinned tweet asks followers to sign up for their newsletter and hopes that you will pursue them on other social media platforms and, of course, come to the gardens and the theater.
Financial Times critic Richard Fairman said that Rose Knox-Peebles, who appears mostly nude as Erda in Barry Kosky's Das Rheingold at ROH, quote, has been made up to look a fright. The 82-year-old fired back, saying that she actually wore no makeup at all. Quote, the review was terribly short and superficial. My appearance was obviously totally irrelevant. I'm supposed to be 4.9 billion years old, so I would hardly look like some beautiful young thing.
In trade news, the Met Opera chorus master Donald Palumbo has announced that he's stepping down at the end of this season after 17 years on the job. Under his tenure, his singers were awarded Best Chorus at the 2021 International Opera Awards.
Exit stage right. Alejandro Merapel has died at the age of 54. The Argentinian baritone suffered a heart attack on stage while performing in the oratorio Il Dona della Vita Eterna with Capella Mediterrana at the Ambernay Festival last week. The performance, which was being broadcast live on television, was abruptly cut off, and about 800 audience members were immediately removed from their premises.
American Helden tenor Stephen Gould has died at 61, weeks after announcing his terminal cancer diagnosis. Gould had had a stint in musical theater before becoming known for his signature heavyweight Wagner roles. In a social media post, the Bayreuth Festival paid tribute to Gould, saying, quote, Stephen Gould was one of the mainstays of the festival from 2004 to 2022, highly esteemed by audiences, the press, and within the festival family. He was rightly dubbed the Wagner Marathon Man and thrilled audiences with his distinctive voice and condition in countless performances.
Soprano Suzanne Soroka has died at 96. First a mezzo, having sung Carmen at La Monnaie and Charlotte in Toulouse, she transitioned to soprano, singing roles like Aida, Tatiana in Eugene Onegin, and Elizabeth in Don Carlo, and went on to become one of France's most notable Toscas.
And on this day, September 25th, first performances include Marco da Galliano and Jacopo Peri's Lo Sposalizio di Medoro e Angelica in Florence in 1619. Giovanni Battista Pergolesi's Adriana in Syria in Naples in 1734. Giri Antonin Benda's Romeo und Julie in Gotha in 1776. Michael Arna's The Maid of the Mill at Covent Garden in 1782. Adolphe Adam's Le Chalet in Paris in 1834. And in 1870, it was the first performance of the fourth and final version of Smetana's The Bartered Bride in Prague. And in 1984, it was the first performance of Luigi Nono's Prometeo in Venice. Birthdays include, well, a baptism at least, in 1683, French composer Jean-Philippe Rameau. 1899 saw the birth of English baritone Dennis Noble in Bristol. Dmitri Shostakovich was born this day in St. Petersburg in 1906. Conductor Sir Colin Davis, born in Surrey in 1927. And happy birthday to Slovakian tenor Peter Dvorsky, born this day, September 25th, in 1951.
And that is your 2-minute drill.
Just a little bit of the late Stephen Gould singing the entrance of Florestan, Gott welch dunkel, from Beethoven's Fidelio. Rest in peace, Stephen Gould.
I looked at the pictures of the Koski Rheingold, and I wish I could be there. It looks so fabulous. It's one of these things in opera. I love this art form so much, and I get so excited when I see these gorgeous productions, and I can't be there. It's too far away. It's too expensive.
So for those of you who didn't read this story, you can read it now. You can go to the link on the webpage, on the website Opera Box Score, and see a picture of what's her name again? Rose
Knox Peebles.
Rose Knox Peebles, and we should clarify that Rose Knox Peebles is an actress / model. So right. I'm not sure exactly who's voicing the role of Erda. But she is an 82-year-old woman who... That's
a good point.
Is basically nude in this
and
production.
And she's apparently on stage the whole time, too, which is no mean feat. And, certainly the age of the actress in question is, important to the concept. Erda is not supposed to be a young woman. She is the earth goddess. She is as old as the earth. So it makes sense that she would be a little older. I do think this I think anytime you have a reviewer commenting overly on appearance, you run the risk of kind of being insulting. And that's what this reviewer did. And, good for her. I think she took it with a reasonable sense of humor, stood up for herself and said, like, obviously that's not the point, So I think that's
trick,
great.
Man. Yeah, you missed a trick, man. These reviews, it's like, what? What are you focusing on? Like,
exactly.
Were we watching the same show? Were we being moved by the same thing? Because clearly you have missed something here.
So I guess the story that everybody, there's a lot of comments
right
on the original post from Opera Wire when they shared Samuel Schultz's Facebook with their, sizable audience. Shots fired, bombs thrown. Man, Ashley's not here, and I maybe am not the person, because I am the one that has to work with all of these people.
Well, let me ask this to you too, because I'm not in social media. I haven't really followed this apart from the show. But it's like, what is Samuel Schultz's point in calling out the Met for Dead Man Walking?
Well, first of all, it's, Susan Graham, who has been a fairly vocal supporter of David Daniels, even before the now infamous, liked comments on David Daniels.
Yeah, they're very good friends. They work together a lot. And apparently when the allegations before the trial, before any of this, when the allegations came out years ago, Susan Graham staunchly defended David Daniels. And I guess sort of denounced Samuel Schultz.
Yeah, fine. So I get the point. I get Schultz's point that like art is imitating life here, right? And that Susan Graham is playing the mother of the rapist murder, which is in Dead Man Walking. Is he saying that the Met should not be doing this opera?
He's saying that he's saying that Susan Graham should not be promoted in the show and maybe even, taken out of the cast.
So is he systematically going to start to just pick away at everyone who has supported David Daniels? I'm not agreeing.
I think so.
I'm not agreeing with Daniels' conduct, to make that super clear. And I would not support him. But like, we're starting to get into the sort of like friends of friends of friends territory here. Where do you stop?
I mean, I think that there's a fair question in there somewhere. I do think that there is a certain irony in the content of the show. And I think Schultz also makes the point in that same Facebook post. It's not just Dead Man Walking. He makes the point that backstage there are signatures from Placido Domingo, James Levine, people like this who have not been taken down. And there is the perception, which actually also...
So let me hold on. Since Weston admitted that he's never been to the Metropolitan Opera, there are these galleries
right.
of 8x10 headshots that like line these walls. I forget exactly what hall it is, but you can see all of these, shots of all of these, luminaries of opera. And up until, I guess, recently, maybe up to this post, it was easy to see pictures of, Jimmy Levine and Placido Domingo, etc. I think the Met has changed that. And now it's only artists that are currently performing.
Right.
Okay. Interesting.
And I don't know what that's it's probably a reaction to James Levine, but I'm not sure if Samuel Schultz has his facts right about pictures of David Daniels and Jimmy Levine posted on the wall. So I haven't been in a while, so I have to go. I can't tell you, but hey, if you go to the Met, hey, PJ can tell us. Go over there, bring your camera, take us a video of whose pictures are actually hanging.
Oliver, you should be spending less time in Philadelphia, more time at the Met. I don't know, man.
I'm going to try to go. Yeah, but I mean, I see where you're going there, George, about saying, where do you draw the line? I understand actually. So Susan Graham, we just had an interview with her a couple of weeks ago when she was at Santa Fe.
Yeah.
I have nothing personal against Susan Graham, and I thought she gave a great interview. But yeah, she seems to be still to this day defending David Daniels, and that says more about her own. How did Ashley describe it? Cognitive
dissonance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That she can't imagine that her friend did these things. She just can't imagine it,
Yeah.
And that says a lot about her as a friend. Like, she's a great friend. So if you ever want to murder somebody, become Susan Graham's best friend. She'll be your alibi.
Wow. Jeez. Just before we wrap it up, as I said,
I went too far, but yeah, you know what I mean. So, it'll be interesting to see where he goes with this, because now it seems like he has some leverage now that David Daniels pleaded, or whatever, he didn't plead guilty. He took a plea deal. You know? It seems like Samuel Schultz has some leverage to see who he's going to start lobbing bombs at. And I'll just say that our friend of the show, Michael Mays, says that Samuel Schultz is wrong that the opera Dead Man Walking doesn't give voice to the victims. He says that's absolutely wrong. It does give voice to the victims. So. Before
we wrap it up, OTSL is off of Twitter, X, blah, blah, whatever. Other opera companies now are also leaving the platform as well. Does anyone care? Like, why would OTSL decide to do this?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's all Elon Musk's fault, which is the general sort of slogan at Twitter for the past, several months now. I think a lot of opera companies are like, is this even worth this to pursue this? Do we just want people on platforms that aren't being abandoned? There's also, persistent rumors that Elon Musk is going to start charging organizations money to be on Twitter, which is probably not worth it to a company like Opera Theater St. Louis. I think that there's Twitter is feeling increasingly like a social media of yesteryear. All the cool young opera companies are heading over to TikTok now. So
even I know that, and I'm not on social media.
So Opera Theater St. Louis, I look forward to seeing you on my feed as soon as possible.
I'll say that, having worked in marketing and having had like boot camps of digital marketing, and having just come from a conference where we talked a lot about what platforms are where the next generation are. Twitter has always been in an in-between spot. Mm-hmm. Facebook remains the number one platform for the generation of audiences that are going to the opera. Instagram is younger. Twitter fell somewhere between Facebook and Instagram. And TikTok is for the youngest generation. There's actually other platforms which we didn't even talk about, like Twitch, that are even for younger, and Snapchat. But Twitter has always been in that weird place that was really for people who liked to, do this thing where they subtweeted and kept conversations going about certain topics. Almost like Reddit or something like that.
Yeah.
But it never was really a place for marketing. It was more of a place for conversation, but not marketing. Facebook remains the best place to have a comprehensive way of like marketing a show. And now, a lot of those people I think are spilling off and moving into Instagram. So I don't think it's a big loss for any company to lose Twitter as a platform. I think that they need to start focusing on Instagram. Everybody needs to start focusing on how to use Instagram. It's we're a very visual
species
generation. Yeah. And Instagram is great for telling stories with images and with videos. Whereas Facebook has never really been great for that. And in order to compete with Instagram, it started turning text posts into images just so that people would look at them, as far as like TikTok and Twitch and all those other things go, ask somebody younger.
TikTok is great. It's honestly perfect for opera marketing. I can only say good things about it.
Yeah.
George is still like sending letters by mail.
I just want to write someone a postcard. Let's wrap this show up.
Good call. Bad call on Opera Box Score.
Good call, bad call. Kicking it off with Oliver Camacho.
Before I went to the Opera Philadelphia Festival, I actually was participating in a public radio conference.
Drink.
And I got to, I almost got to meet Ira Glass, even though he ended up canceling. He had a death in the family.
Wasn't Philip, was it?
No, he was giving a keynote. He was going to be giving a keynote final talk, but he had to back out, so I didn't get a chance to meet him. But I did get to meet Ezra Klein, my wonk boyfriend from way back. Ari Shapiro, who is like 7 feet tall.
Ari Shapiro!
And so handsome. Like, he's so handsome that it hurts a little bit. It's like when you look at him, you feel like, ugh, I'll never be as good looking
That's
as
so
you.
funny. Ari was a senior when I was a freshman at Yale. When I think of Ari, I always think
Drink again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he must have been tall even back then.
Well, I've always been short, Oliver, so it's kind of all relative.
So speaking of short, I met one of my heroes, Terry Gross, of Fresh Air.
Wow.
And there was a long line of people that wanted to like have their picture taken with her. And I was at the front because I literally ran to be in the front of that line. And I think everybody was getting so annoyed with me because I was talking to her about opera and how when
how you
Dolores
do an
Zajic,
opera podcast, and would she like to feature it? Yes.
when Dolores Zajic was her interview guest, how she kept correcting Terry Gross on how to say un ballo en maschera, and she wouldn't let it go. Like, it was really like a minute of Dolores Zajic correcting Terry Gross. I was like, why don't just say a masked ball? That's it, Anyway, I did tell Terry Gross about Opera Box Score.
Did you really?
I did. And so if we get one extra count every episode,
it's Terry Gross.
Oliver.
Hi, Terry.
You are the absolute best. How I love you. That's so great. That has absolutely made my day. Weston Williams.
Well, it's finally officially fall. I think. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't looked at the calendar, but I think it's officially fall. And the reason I know it's fall is because, I come from a place where opera festivals during the summer are just not a thing. So I still have something very deep in my physiology. Like, I can smell when opera season is starting again. And I had that moment this past week where I woke up and I walked outside and I was like, yeah, I'm seeing Flying Dutchman soon, right? And then I realized I had accidentally already gotten a ticket to see Night of the Living Dead at a movie theater. So, that's what my life is like. And also, why is there no Night of the Living Dead opera?
Well,
that's my bad call. There should be one.
Do you know who also had a great fall?
Who?
Humpty Dumpty. That's it for this week's edition of America's Talk Radio
Can't
Show.
believe you're ending the show on that joke.
Hey, make sure you subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts. Get your voice heard. Find links to stuff we've talked about at the website operaboxscore.com. It's also where you can put your money where our mouths are. You give back to the OBS on the page that says support the team. Your announcer is Norm Waddell. Your creative consultant is Oliver Camacho. And your audio editor is Weston Williams. I'm George Cedarquist, asking you to continue the conversation about opera as you let it all hang out like Erida. We're back with an all-new show next week when Lisette Oropesa takes a free throw on Lucia. Plus, you get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more early Verdi operas. Join us.